in term 2, we're going to set our programs in such a way that they're going to make decisions. In the textbook, we're going to work from page 69 onwards. In term 1, our programs were typical concrete programs, where they were one way and they were sequential. No decisions were made whatsoever. And that's exactly what we're going to do here in term 2. We're going to work with abstract programming, and it's going to be based on conditions, and that particular condition is going to determine the sequence, and we will also then see that those sequences will result in Boolean or Boolean conditions. And all those conditions are being tested by or put together by relational operators. This is a typical example of a condition where we're going to test a value against an input. So the value in this case, we're testing it by means of the relational operator to see if this is less than, hence the operator there, less than 40. And the implications of that are twofold, Booleans. They can either be true or they can be false. And based on that, we have to then set up our program. And let's have a look at the variety of relational operators that we're going to use here in term 2. In this case, we're going to look then greater than or equals to. Please look at the sequence. It's first this one, then that one. Once again, there's the implication of true and false. We can also look at the greater than, the less than or equal to. We're going to work with majority with the equals. We're going to look and see if the password in this case is equals to a particular input with our true and false result. And then look at this interesting one. It's going to have a look at if it's not equal to. That's the way to set it up, and that's the way it's going to do. Right, so let's have a look at the actual syntax. The syntax in this case, we're going to start, like in English, we're going to ask the question, what if my marks are not what they're supposed to be? In Delphi, the syntax will look as follows. We're going to start with the if, and at this stage I can say that, remember, it has to have a corresponding end. And in this case, I'm going to compare a variable by means of a relational operator to a set value. If condition, then. If condition, then. If it's true, this is what the output is going to be. We're going to then determine the result, and based on that, if it's true, we're going to give an output called distinction. Let's have a look at the flowchart. We're going to test the condition. If it's true, it's going to go to the statement. This is what this is called, that area there between the if and the end. This is called a statement. We can have many of those. I'll explain. Once the statement is true, it's then going to fall out of the loop. If it's no, it's going to be the same thing. If it doesn't meet the condition, it's then going to fall out, and that'll be the end of the statement. In this particular case, we only use one statement. So let's have a look at if we have to have more than that. Same scenario, if corresponding end. We're going to check IH in this case to be smaller than 15. Then what we have here, there's a begin. For the fact that I have more than one statement, I have to have a begin and end. This begin is the start of the statements, it's the end of the statement, and that end is the end of the if. In this case, we refer to this as a compound statement. By the way, majority of ifs will have a begin and end anyway. Let's move on to another one. The if then else. In this case, let's first look at the flowchart. We're going to test the condition, and in this case it's going to have a statement whether it's true or false. It's going to have a statement whether it's true or false. Let's see how to do this. If corresponding end, that's the condition. Then if it's true, There's my first line or my first statement. Else, it's going to have another statement. If, then, else. Remember, no semicolon. That means that semicolon. Everything above the else should not have a semicolon. So no semicolons above the else. So that's the first one. If it's true, because the condition continues, it's going to check that, and only at the end of that, it reaches the false part, and from there on, it's the end. Remember, once again, no semicolons. We know that with every program that we write, there should be an IPO, input, process, and output table. And this is the way we should set it up in our IPO. So in this case, we're checking if the average, we're busy with marks once again, check if this average is greater than or equals to 90, and this is the way the IP is going to go. At this stage, let's move on to Delphi and have a look and see how this was done. What I've done here, created a form, and I'm going to test the various ifs by means of little buttons. Let's have a look at this first one. So the if button, in this case, it's all about marks again. I'm going to give iMark a value. I'm getting input from the end user, and here comes the test. I'm testing if smark, which was the mark inputted by the end user, is equal to iMark. I'm testing the condition, then that's my output. Only one statement. It can only be true. If it's false, it would not give us a distinction. Let's move on to the compound one. That means it has two conditions, two statements, I should say, two statements. So I'm testing IH against an input, a value. If the condition is been met, then between the begin and end, which the previous one didn't have, I will then increase that and put that out there to show that we have more than one teenager. Once again, this is the so-called compound if we have more than one statement down there. This is what the if then else looks like. If then else, where we will have a statement based on true or false. So I'm going to test the condition here and see if iMarks, once again obtained from the end user input, is greater than or equals to 50. Then it's going to be a pass. Please note, no semicolon. Else, no semicolon, because this is still part of the false condition or the false testing thereof, and that's what is going to then give me a fail. Let's run this. Let's quickly see how it works. Let's move that down there. What I'm going to do is just move this up here to see that this works nicely. So there we go. I'm going to click the if. It's now waiting for the input from the end user, and I want to see if this mark is greater than 80. So I'm going to put in 12, and as I click on OK, can you see it stays the same because it did not meet the condition. If I run this again, and we set 80, so let's make that an 81, and let's click on OK. We see that the condition is now met. It is true, and therefore it will be the panel's label will be changed to distinction. Let's move on to the next one. So the compound one, what we're going to do here is we are going to click the button. We're asking for input, and in this case we're going to see whether they are teenagers or not. And remember, it was set up to be smaller then. So if you are 16, are you a teenager? Can you see no output? It stays the same because this condition was not met. Let's run this again, and the teenagers should be younger than 13. So 12, let's click on OK. The condition is now met, and yes, you can see the output has been given. There's the number, there's the text, that means it has reached the condition that we've set. Let's move on to the next one, the if then else. Let's see what happens here. As I click the button, prompting the end user for some input, and in this case we want to see whether the person is going to pass or fail based on the input obtained from the end user. Let's say they got only 12. As I click on OK, can you see it then did not meet the true part? It went on to the false part, just below the else, and therefore it's a fail, hence the output. Let's see if the opposite is true. Let's say we're going to get 50. 50 because we say greater than or equals to. As I click on OK, it is now taking the true part that it has now met the condition, and therefore it is the pass, as on the output here on the panel. For this particular exercise, I've given you, I would like you to follow pages 73 to 74. Those are easy, those are step-by-steps. All the code is in the textbook already. And then once you've mastered that, there are 4 exercises on page 75 that you need to do until we chat again.